we have any add-ons? I think we do.
I do have one add-on. I have a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a quote from Patterson Pope Incorporated for space saver material listed on the attached quote Q72093 on behalf of the Warren County Recorder.
So moved?
Yes to that as well. Okay,
Crystal, you have the one for Lebanon as well? Okay, sorry.
good.
I do have a second item, it's not a resolution. The city of Lebanon has asked us to sign a letter of support. They're preparing to submit an application for the U.S. Department of Transportation's Safe Streets and Roads Implementation Grant. So they've just asked if the board would be okay with signing a letter of support. It's the Safe Streets and Roads for All, so it's SS4A. And
What is that?
So it's,
I want all our streets to be safe.
well, yeah. So they have a program,
Safe
yeah, so it's a program for a grant for, like, as Crystal said, from the DOT, which requires a 20% match. So the 20% match from the city of Lebanon would be about 1.3 million. They're seeking just over 5 million. The biggest thing probably in this is where Miller Road, 42, and the bypass there, kind of south of Walmart, kind of Columbus Avenue, all that areas, they're planning on doing a roundabout there. They'd like to do a roundabout there. In addition to that, it's a lot of items with doing, they call them, Kirk could probably tell, road tattoos, where it sort of shows you where it merges or where you need to get over and those types of items. And then doing a lot of other lane signalization or signals and things down the 48 bypass to improve the safety, because I've been on that a lot of times and there's a significant amount of semi-traffic, people going pretty fast. So I think it's calming the traffic that's coming in, trying to, obviously, because it's safety, is to reduce any fatalities that occur in accidents. But I think my guess is obviously they would score higher if the county was willing to do a letter of recommendation. But there'd be no funds that I'm aware of that we would do. It would be strictly their 1-some million, 20% match, and whatever the U.S. Department of Transportation came in at.
Yeah, I just read it, I'm fine with it.
Me too.
Okay.
Ohio's a donor state on transportation funds, so I'm in support of getting their tax dollars back here in Ohio.
Okay, so do we want to make a motion on that? What do we, or do we
Do we
do
need
we need a
one?
motion?
Anything, we just,
Okay, we just say, okay, we're all
We'll
good with
sign.
it.
yeah.
Okay,
We'll
so we
sign.
actually sign the letter? All right, apparently we do.
Yeah, they had a template letter that we used.
Okay, does that mean that we're finished with that and we can
That's-
call our first agenda item
Yes, sir,
with
that's all I
Mr.
have.
Weber? How are you doing?
Good, how are you guys?
Living the dream.
Main thing is, how are you in your new role?
Doing fine, doing fine, absolutely. But, thanks for having us here this morning. This is to talk about Tour Estates, which is subdivision up in Clear Creek Township off of State Route 48. And the developer has failed to complete all the improvements, performance and maintenance, both. When the security agreement was done, you know, it came in at the maintenance amount, the maintenance dollar amount, which is many times it's standard. We've had, looking back at the records, we've had a couple different punch lists where, you know, representatives from our office have gone out and Clear Creek Township have gone out with and without the developer attending. The most recent one was in 2019, the fall of 2019, and the pavement's in bad shape. It needs to be resurfaced. All of it does. We've estimated it's a cost of $175,000. The bond amounts through their escrow letters with U.S. Bank, they total for both sections about $93,000. So there's a shortfall there, but we've made attempts. Sadly, we learned that the developer, the father, Donald Class, it's Dominus Incorporated, but Donald Class passed away, I believe, in the early 2000s. His son, David Class, was the one that was running the development. He just passed away in February, we believe. Right about the time we sent the first letter, we sent a letter to Dominus, to the PO box that was in the security agreement. I know they received it, because the mother that's still living, her caretaker reached out to me via telephone and said, hey, we received the letter. And she just mentioned that her mother doesn't know a lot about what went on with the business, you know. So we then, on May 7th, sent, and we sent that letter in February, both, you know, certified and also regular mail, proof of mailing. May 7th, we sent another letter to the developer's address, the PO box, addressed it to Mr. Class, even though because we weren't sure the successors of the corporation.
It is a corporation?
Yes, yeah, Dominus Incorporated.
All right.
And so we also sent it to Chase Bank. We did get we received the card back from Chase Bank, showing that they received it. We did, unfortunately, just yesterday, it took, you know, a month, but we received the proof of mailing, or excuse me, the regular mailing by proof of mailing. We received that back saying unable to deliver. A week before, we had received the certified back saying unable to deliver. We figured that the regular one would be delivered because they listed you know, sometimes the post office will have that little label on there that, you know, the new address is this, although they didn't deliver it, because the PO box had been closed. So they failed to receive notice of this meeting. We didn't learn that till yesterday, at the end of the day, unfortunately. They did know from the February letter, though, that we were gonna recommend, you know, if we didn't hear anything back from them in writing, that we were gonna recommend to the board to declare them in default.
Is the corporation that you're talking about?
Yes.
It's the corporation that's the developer,
Yes,
and the principal has died.
yes.
Are there any other members or holders of this corporation?
Yeah, I don't know if Bruce,
Corporation is in good standing according to the Ohio Secretary of State. The persons listed as directors included Harriet Klaus. Is that who you dealt with?
I didn't talk to her directly, but I believe I talked to her caretaker, the one that
Okay.
talked.
So she's listed as a director. Donald L. Klaus and David J. Klaus are all listed as directors of the corporation.
And one of those gentlemen have died.
Two of them.
Both of them have
Donald
died,
and
both the
David.
father and the son.
Yeah.
Yes,
All right, it sounded like you'd said that, but all right.
right,
So the mother is still alive,
yes.
but you've heard from her caretaker, and she doesn't sound like she's really involved.
Correct, that was, yeah,
All right, so this is a subdivision where lots have been sold and houses have been built?
yes.
And I take it from some of the audience members that may be here that perhaps we have some house members that are
We, with,
upset in here.
today, we've got, my chief deputy Roy Henson and, Jason Fisher, our subdivision inspector,
Okay.
and Tabitha Ryan, our planning and design coordinator. So I'm not aware.
So how many
Plus the township has
have been,
representatives as
have
well.
been sold, and how many lots are still to be sold?
That's a great question. I don't, do you know?
Fully developed, I don't know.
It's
Right.
fully developed?
Yes, one
All-
lot left.
One lot.
One lot is left? And how much were they selling these lots for?
I don't know. Anybody know?
Okay, and so how many total homes are in this subdivision? Don't know, and the street, I take it the street has not been accepted, so it's not yet the responsibility of the township or the county?
That's correct.
All right, and hence the fact that you're coming, and they didn't finish the final course or make corrections on any defects?
Yeah, they did the final course back in 2014, but it has not performed well. And every punch list since then has called for pavement repair. In fact, the last one that we had in the fall of 2019 called for full, you know, getting a pavement
So, I mean, this is pretty simple in my mind.
Yeah,
So it's, the road isn't up to our standard, it hasn't been accepted. Developers come, it is clearly their responsibility for the road.
Yes.
They put up a bond to say, in case we don't perform, then you can have access to this. Problem is, when we call that bond, that's not gonna be sufficient to cover the total cost of the road to bring it up to par.
Yes, sir.
So then if we're dealing with a corporation, there are no personal guarantees with this, right? I mean, no one's personally guaranteeing anything.
Yeah.
So there's a corporation we're dealing with, whether we like it or not, whether the members died or not, there's legal action against that corporation. The corporation apparently does have assets based on Commissioner Grossman's line of questioning that there's at least one lot which has a value there. And I would think that the appropriate course of action is to go after that corporation to reimburse whoever for the cost of completion.
But in the meantime, the responsibility for the completion is on the county, but I read the memo from our administrator that originally the township was offering to pay half, and then they decided not to pay half, is that right?
Correct.
All right. And is it,
What changed, and, I mean, we normally don't get very pointed letters telling us to do something, or it's our responsibility as opposed to asking us for something. Has something changed there?
I'd have to defer to the township on that, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have any further questions for you, but I might have the township.
Okay, thank you.
Shannon?
One question would be, how much would have to be contributed by anyone, township and or the county? Kurt, maybe I just wasn't paying attention. Did you talk about your communications with the bank? Bank originally was Bank One, who my understanding was acquired by JP Morgan Chase Bank.
Chase Bank,
There's,
correct. That's right.
the security agreements were bonded, as you said, in the form of escrow letters. The escrow letters provide that the bank cannot release the funds without the consent of the county. So have we heard from the bank on their position about the availability? The proposed resolution mentions 93, that's the amount for both section 1 and section 2, but have we heard anything from the bank? Is anyone here from the bank today? Because they were given notice relating to this matter. And so are we potentially gonna get 93,000, or are we gonna get less?
And what are the numbers, the total project to bring this up to par is
Yeah.
how much, and then we have bonds totaling how much?
Yeah, good question. So the cost estimate to resurface all the streets within section 1 and section 2, the entire subdivision, is about $175,000. And the bonds that we have, the escrow, in the form of escrow letters, are between total $93,336.
So it's like 80 grand.
Yeah,
Okay.
Right.
And that 80,000 from somebody brings this thing up to standard.
That is if the bank,
Releases it.
yeah, if the bank I mean, this is 20 years old. Does the bank still have accounts with $93,000?
But isn't that their problem if they don't?
Yes, but there's a rub to that. So have you heard from the bank?
so no. In fact, we had to send the letter, we talked to the bank locally in Centerville, and they said we would have to talk to the national, through the website. I talked to this lady out of, I think it was California, and got the address, so we mailed it to Louisiana, and we did get a return card saying that they received the letter. We also faxed it to them, that was another method that we could, communicate. So they've received a notice of the May 7th letter. However, we have not had any response from them, no.
Well, it seems pretty straightforward to me. I guess if the board has to consent to collect on that we would want to do that, collect on that, and then it's a question of the delta difference. What is the legal remedy? And I guess, Bruce, that question's to you, is what is the legal remedy to collect from the successor or you say that the company's in good standing with the Secretary of State's office, like, I don't know, do we have to litigate with them if we can't get a hold of them to try to get, payment? What is the legal remedy that's available to us?
We can file an action against the corporation. Tabitha, have you checked, is this vacant lot still titled in the corporation's
Yeah, I was
name?
gonna ask that, who owns the lot? They might have sold it to a home builder.
Do you know the plat book and page number? I can check it.
It's not a real lot. It's, I've got a value of $2,000. It's just residual land left over. It's the only thing left in town, and it's just,
Oh, so it's not a
Oh,
buildable.
so it's not a lot, it's not a buildable lot.
it's not real.
2,000.
All right, so the likelihood of us getting anything from this corporation is probably very low.
But the resolution's gonna direct the county administrator to present, this matter to the bank, Chase Bank, and we'll find out how much they agreed to pay, if any, and we may have to bring an action against the bank. If we do, we'll also bring it against the corporation as a necessary party, but the reality of recouping anything from the corporation may be unlikely.
But when did the son pass away?
Just in February of this year.
I mean, it could be that the state is still, that hasn't been settled yet. So there may be assets of the corporation that they're processing through creditors and so forth, since that was so
I think we
recent.
checked that, as I recall, but I'll check it while we're having this discussion this morning.
Well, I don't know how that works exactly, but the corporation is a separate entity, and there's still at least one shareholder who's alive, and there may be an estate where the shares of the decedent are going to be going to someone, and I don't know how that works, but that probably doesn't much matter, because either the corporation has assets or it doesn't, and I
Right.
guess we're gonna try to figure that out. And now that we've determined that the lot isn't really that, that's not an avenue of any recovery. So then it comes down to, we've got to do the work regardless. So do we have to wait for this process to go forward with getting it done, that is getting the bond money? Or do we go forward with it without that process? Because that process may take a while, Bruce.
That's an engineering question about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from a timing perspective, I was gonna ask Mr. McGarry from a legal perspective, but as far as getting the work done, we'd like to do it,
And I take
however
it
we
it's-
agree to do it as soon as we can, because our annual paving resurfacing contract actually came in lower in cost than it was last year. The cost per ton of asphalt was $12 to $15 a ton less than it was the previous year, which
Well, our
I don't know if
doing
that's
it-
ever happened in my 30 years of being here, but, so I think I'd like to be able to do it. I think we all would like to be able to do it, right, from the township and county perspective, the sooner the better, and capture these, more cost-effective rates. We could do a change order to our contract if the commissioners would approve that.
Okay, I think that, this is all fairly straightforward on the financial side. There is a corporation, it's not an individual, we don't know if there's assets, but legally, we have to go after them, period. Period, end of story. We have to go after the bond, period, end of story.
And I guess that's my question, is that Bruce, can we go ahead
Yes, if
And-
they declare
and,
default,
Yeah,
can we go ahead and do the work before we recover funds?
yes.
And so now I get it, that is, you brought up the very pertinent word, that is my next question to you, when you say we. Whose responsibility is it that you have a street that's not accepted by anyone at this point, it's a developer's street, we have residents that are paying taxes that are kind of getting hosed, that their street is terrible, and somebody needs to fix it. Under the law, whose responsibility is this?
And so, for example, when the street gets accepted, is it a township street and they maintain it? Or is this a county road and we maintain it?
We haven't reached the stage where it's the practice of the Board of County Commissioners historically to ask a township to agree to accept a street. But under the revised code, it's up to the county engineer to determine whether it's gonna be a county versus a township road or street. And in my 27 years, I can only remember once where the county engineer said it's gonna be a township street, and the township said, well, it's in such a bad condition, we're not going to accept it. That was Turtle Creek. They ended up accepting it because I think the commissioners and the board of trustees figured out what the delta was, and they figured out who was gonna contribute how much to make it meet our standards. But my position is on the law, once the county determines it's township street, it's township's responsibility. That hasn't happened yet, is that right, Kurt?
Correct. I mean, it's correct. I mean, generally, we would do that. We would submit a resolution to the commissioners to accept the streets within the subdivision for public maintenance and assign it to the township, in this case, Clear Creek Township. But we haven't done that because, we were trying to sort out,
So why has it taken 6 years? If this was made evident to you in 2019, why are we here in 2025? Because presumably in 2019, there was an operating corporation with assets within it. And now we've had 2 deaths of 2 of the 3 board of directors. And nothing by way of assets.
yeah, great question. It's been our practice to do everything we can to let the developers perform. So the way it works, it may not explain the 6 years. Great point. The last punch list was in August of 2019. Developer, yep, we're gonna do it, and then they run out of weather. They should come back in the spring of 20 and do it. Don't really have a good answer other than that, other than historically, when we've tried to declare developers in default, it's been a challenge, just being quite honest, to go through the process, to recover the funds. That's not a good excuse, but, and we've talked about it internally. We've got to come up with a better process of when it gets to a point and they're not performing, we'll probably be coming to see more often, is my hope, because to your point, Shannon, we've got to, so yeah, that's our fault, so.
Well, okay. I'm sorry about that. But now I guess I'd like to hear, unless you guys have any other further questions from the township.
Yeah, I'm still unclear on my question though. Is there
Yes,
anything under the law in this circumstance, who pays?
No, but if this was designated a township street, it's the township's responsibility to do so.
But right now, we're in this gray area because there is no because it's not designated anything, it's not a county street. It's the developer's street.
developer's responsibility.
So that's the heart of my question of, since it's gray, there is no provision in the law saying, in a case of an undedicated street, blank will pay for ultimately the repairs.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and this exercise is a teaching tool that we can't let these subdivisions go this long. Because this sort of thing happens, and the thing that really happens is the cost to complete a subdivision, the streets has inflated such that our bond is never sufficient to cover later down the road what it's gonna cost to actually do the work.
Right, especially in the last, even the last 5 years, it's, prices have doubled.
So
that's
generally
what-
speaking, these types of streets become township streets and township responsibility.
Yes,
This is not, we're not traditionally, would we have a subdivision internal street, which is what this is,
correct,
be a county road.
correct.
And at the end of the day, this will ultimately be an accepted township, because presumably, regardless of who pays for this thing to fix it, it's gonna be dedicated and accepted by the township and become a township responsibility.
Right.
It's never gonna be a county road.
No.
So hence, perhaps why the township originally agreed to pay half of it, which was, okay, great, which to me seems like we're the ones that are saying, oh, we're gonna come up and we're gonna help with this. And ultimately, we're hoping to get complete recovery from the corporation, which probably won't happen. So again, now I come back to the township and what's going on. I see my friend Steve Mutersbaugh over there, and maybe he'd like to come and explain this.
Yeah, my last point is two small housekeeping items before we
Yes.
release you. Number one, I don't think we should, and especially Bruce, your comments on this, we shouldn't allow a PO box to be, for these official matters, should not be okay. We need a legal residence, we need somebody signing for these documents, and I think that would be a practice that we're not going to do this unless we get a legal residence where someone can actually sign, number one. And number two, I agree with Commissioner Jones that I know what's going on. You guys are just playing nice with the development community. Generally, they figure it out. Generally, they do this. But I think we need to maybe do a little bit more hardball, that if you don't do anything over some grace period that's extended by another 12 months, then boom, it's game on.
We're gonna be, yeah. And we, historically, over the last 30 years, there's been times that we've come to the board, maybe with you folks, maybe before that, you know, and there may be a time where the developer comes and the developer says, oh, I'll make these improvements, you know, and that can go back and forth for a while. I mean, but yeah, point well made.
So just those 2 points, thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
All right.
appreciate it.
Yeah, one more thing I'll add, just so you know, and that is, in my recollection, over the last 20-some years, it's rare that we have an escrow letter. We typically have a surety bond or a letter of credit, and then there's a premium attached to that where the bank is going back to the developer saying it's time to pay your premium, and their incentive is to get these things done, to get those released. With an escrow letter, the funds are just there, and there's not that timing of a premium being paid.
Right, and that's, again, that's not getting into bank regulations, but that is on the bank. In a successor bank, when you acquire the assets and liabilities, that is the liability of that bank, and that's on them to demand that depositor has those assets available. So 100%, I'm comfortable we're gonna get that money because they bought that bank and that letter still exists. They knew it was there as part of their due diligence. They're saying that the money was in that account. If it's not, we're gonna go after that bank.
Yeah.
So, okay, fair enough.
Well, Bruce, my question then is around, if it's not usual that we have an escrow letter as opposed to a bond, is that a practice that has fallen out of favor? I mean, does the developer get to choose how they do this, or do we require, I mean, it seems to me we would want a bond for precisely this, type of circumstance, but.
We have options. I mentioned 2, the
Uh-huh.
escrow is 3. So we've always allowed the developer to choose which one they wanted. And I don't know enough about banking, whether it's hard to get a bank to sign off on an escrow letter or not. We just haven't seen many of those unless it was kind of a unique circumstance. It's been our practice. There was a period of time that letters of credit, we got burned on some of those. And we didn't favor those being used. And because I think the banking industry changed in the last 5 to 10 years, most of the developers are using surety bonds now. They're not using, it's rare to see a letter of credit. And our regulations are very rigid and precise about letters of credit, and a lot of the banks can't comply with them and don't. It doesn't work. So they use the surety bond, but rarely have we done the escrow letter. And I guess we could always say, no, we don't want an escrow letter.
Well, maybe the outcome of this, of how difficult this is gonna be, will determine, do we allow this moving forward?
Yeah. Because at least the bond, there is some protection, you know, I use protection around, you know, inflation and so forth, because there's a payment, you know, having to come due on a regular, that it accelerates, you know, nobody's hanging out there because they're having to continually come up with resources. And it also begs the question, Kurt, like, and I don't know the answer to it, it's just the kind of questions that come into your mind is that, are we, you know, are we asking for a sufficient size that if there is a default, that we have the ability to finish it? And it sounds like in this instance, it's obviously not sufficient. And is that a function of 6 years where the cost of everything accelerated so dramatically and we kind of dropped the ball? Or is that something that we need to be more thoughtful about as we have new subdivisions being platted and what's required of them?
No, great question, both. I would say, definitely the 5 or 6 years, you know, prices have gone up. And like Bruce mentioned, that the original security agreements were from 2005, 2006. So, I mean, that's 20 years, even without everything, all the inflation that we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, prices are still gonna go up. So I think the process of determining the bond amount is still good, to be quite honest with you. It's just, we've gotta do a better job of acting more quickly when the developer doesn't get out there and do the work. And we've talked about that internally. We're gonna come up with a process, and so you'll probably see more of these. And
Well, maybe we can have a separate work session on
Yeah,
that,
understand.
our bonding requirements
I
and what
think
is best.
we need to do some more work internally in our office, and then we would be glad to do that, just to, yeah,
Fair.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, so could we hear from the township now?
Good morning, and thank you for the time today. By way of introduction, my name is Matt Clark. I am the Township Administrator for Clear Creek Township, and I'll be brief in my comments to, our point is actually very succinct, but as the commissioners have recognized, there are several township officials here today. There's Trustee Vice President, Trustee Jason Gabbard, Mr. Muterspaw, Trustee is here, our elected fiscal officer, Russ Corollas is here, and my road superintendent, Ryan Jones, is here. So, again, thank you for the time. Mr. Wade desperately wanted to be here, but he was absolutely unable to be here this morning, and he sent his regrets. To our point, townships are creatures of statute, unlike municipalities who draw their authority through their enabling charters. And as such, townships are only granted those powers that are bestowed upon them by the statutes. We lack the authority to call performance bonds, as you're aware. And it's that reason that our Board of Trustees believes that the county should bear any cost beyond the bond proceeds to repave the subdivision. But there is more risk than just the paving and repaving of this. And I want to touch on one point that Kurt made about, you know, the pricing of asphalt to do it this year makes the most sense. The streets in our tourist states are critically degraded, and our road superintendent and I feel that waiting another season, we may lose those roads entirely and be looking at a full depth repair. So you can take the number that's quoted for simply milling and filling it and probably triple it if we're doing a full depth repair. So that's why time is of the essence in this particular matter as well. But there's also costs to be incurred in repair of catch basins, of which there are 27 in that particular subdivision. And there are underground lines and pipes and culverts. We don't know the condition of those either, because the standard practice in the punch list is to go in there and actually run a camera through those underground systems to check whether they're clogged, whether they're damaged, whatever. You know, there's more risk than just accepting the paving that the township is gonna have to eat in this matter, never mind the repaving component of it. But essentially, our point was made through the letter that we had sent the commissioners, and it's for that reason that we wanted to take the opportunity to stand here and speak and ask the board for your thoughtful consideration of our request for relief of this liability, because it is a liability at this point in time. It has not been accepted by the township trustees. It obviously has not been accepted by the Board of Commissioners. But there is an awful lot more risk in this particular subdivision than just milling and filling. So I'll avail myself to any questions that the commissioners have.
Well, if this road had not had these significant problems, well, let's say we correct this problem, and let's say we pay for the whole thing instead of getting the half that you originally offered to pay, or that your township did. You've accepted the road, and you've accepted the obligation to care for the road. Now, the other things you're talking about, like what, water lines, sewer lines, you're not, what are you worried about?
The drainage system, surface
Drainage.
water, stormwater,
Stormwater,
Infrastructure.
and you're responsible, but that's part of the road system.
correct.
But you were always responsible for that after you've accepted the road.
Agreed.
So I don't understand, is your point that because of the degradation of the current top of this road suggests to you that there's other aspects to the drainage system or the stormwater system that are a potential problem too?
It's standard practice doing a punch list in a subdivision would require a developer to hire someone to camera the underground infrastructure, along with just looking at the pavement and seeing what condition it's in and seeing what needs to be milled, filled, patched, whatever the case is. So the figures that we're talking about here today and in this letter pertain only to the paving.
But before you become responsible for the road, do you require that they camera all that stuff?
Usually, yeah, in a punch list.
Okay.
Was that on the 2019 punch list?
If I, yeah.
Come on, Kurt,
Yeah.
you're fine.
Yeah. So Matt's exactly right in that, that's what we require now. You know, all the storm sewer, you know, culvert pipes and drainage storm sewer system pipes to be cambered. Back in 2019, it was not a requirement to camber that. But Matt makes a good point in that the punch list was not limited just to pavement. The punch list had mentioned the things that Matt mentioned, the catch basins, and right, you don't, absolutely don't know about the pipes, because at that time we weren't cammering those, but there are other items on here, and I failed to mention that the township did mention that they would, you know, if we could get it resurfaced, that they would take care of the other items, because I think that I don't wanna say it's more important, because it's all important, but yet the pavement is really, the concern.
It's critical.
Yeah, very critical, and like Matt said, we need to get that done this year. So much so that I think they felt like, I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but they would work with the other maintenance items of the catch basins and whatnot. And I did fail to mention that earlier, so. There are other items on the punch list.
In other words,
besides
if we repair the road at our cost, we collect what we can from the bond, maybe we pursue the corporation with whatever recoupment we can get from them, you're then gonna be accepting the road, we're gonna do what's necessary to have that happen, and then you're taking care of it. There's no further issue.
Yeah, but I mean, also, it's, you know, not to get into township finances, I mean, the township, you had a farm field 25 years ago, and now you have how many homes on it?
I think 27, 28.
Yeah, so I would have a feeling that the taxes that you receive from those 28 homes exceeds what it did for a farm field. So the county, or the township does produce revenue, that's how you make revenue, is your assessed valuations of the properties. And I have a feeling those 28 homes is worth a heck of a lot more than a farm field. So everybody's got a vested interest in seeing this right. My only problem after doing this 21 years, typically townships come to us and ask of things, and we work together and we try to figure something out. And when I read, accordingly, the township submits that the Board of Commissioners absorb all costs exceeding any bond proceeds, this makes the most sense for our respective constituents and for the fidelity to our respective fiduciary duties. That's kind of a hardball statement that you're telling us we have to do this. We don't have to do it. Prosecutor just said we don't have to. We're trying to work together in the same sandbox for the 27 residents, but as fidelity to our entire constituency, those are your residents as well. Yeah, they're in the county, but I typically don't do well when people are kind of demanding you do this. I don't know that it is. We can say no. So it's generally we work together and, hey, here are the other punch list items, here are the other things over here, and this could cost a significant amount of money. We'll cover all this if you do this. That's not what your letter says.
And that was our fault for not communicating that day. Apologize for that.
Well, I think that, you know, if, you know, from my point of view, for us to go ahead, and I'm sympathetic to, we don't want another season to get by. It's been way too long, and, you know, my instinct is we should just get the roads fixed. We pursue whatever legal recourse that we need to pursue to recover that resource on behalf of the taxpayer. And then turn the roads over to the township, and try to get that done as quickly as possible. So we'll finance it up front, we'll take the responsibility for trying to recover, we'll do it as quickly as we can, and then any other items that are left will become the township's responsibility upon acceptance of the roads. I mean, you know, I don't know what else there is to talk about, but I guess I just echo, I mean, we really work hard to be good partners with our townships and cities, and I was a little taken aback when I got the letter. First of all, I was unaware of it, and I think we take our duty seriously. We're also a creature of statute, so we do what the statute tells us and no more.
Which is exactly when we ask, are we required to do this? And the answer is no. So that's why we were asking those questions. Yeah, we're limited also. Sorry.
At the same time, we're kind of in a, you know, catch-22 here. It needs to be done. And it's in our county, it's in your township, you don't want to pay for it. In fact, you said you're not going to, I guess. In which case, it sort of falls to us to do it unless we all say no, and then we have the problem. And we're not gonna do that. But I guess your offer is, we pay for it, we collect what we can, and you take over the road, and now it's your responsibility. We're not gonna talk to you again about, you're not gonna come to us again to get help.
But which is the way it is 100% of the time once they
I
accept
know,
it.
exactly.
So it's not really much of an offer, because once it's accepted, it's their
Well,
responsibility anyway.
what they're saying is that they normally would have done this scoping out to figure something out before they accepted it, to determine that the stormwater and the culverts and all that stuff were all okay.
Yeah, I'm almost tired of talking about it. That's fine. We'll do it. We'll step up like we always do. We'll do it. We'll make sure the road's complete, because we don't want 27 residents, you know, with a road falling apart. This came on our radar literally 10 days ago or something. Now we're having, or 2 weeks ago. Now we had our first meeting and we're telling our engineers, go do it. So, I mean, we work pretty fast around here, because we understand the cost of this is gonna do nothing but going up. But I stand by my statements of, generally this is a collaborative process. We kind of work together, as opposed to that you're telling us you're gonna do this. I don't like that. And I'm a pretty transparent guy. That doesn't play well with me. Fair enough?
Do we need to pass
Yes.
a resolution?
Are you guys we'll do that and pay for it out of our road and bridge as
Yep.
part of our
Right.
resurfacing contract? Okay.
And
thank you.
proceed to get the bond or the surety or the letter of credit, whatever the heck that was.
Escrow letter.
Escrow.
Escrow letter. I was looking for it and I didn't remember
And
it.
Bruce, you have full authority to go after that, I'm throwing stuff at you now. That full authority to go after the corporation.
After Martin makes a demand, then we'll figure out how much we can get, if any.
All right, fair enough, thank you.
We got that resolution.
So I've got a resolution declaring Dominus Incorporated to be in default in the performance and maintenance of public improvements in the Altura Estates subdivision, Section 1 and Section 2, located in Clear Creek Township, authorizing notice of default to the surety company along with the escrow letters in possession of the county in exchange for the sum of $93,336.20 to complete the construction of the uncompleted and unapproved improvements per the terms of security agreement numbers 05-055P and 06-001P.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion further? No? Seeing none, call the roll.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Very good, thanks,
Thank
Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
you.
very much. Okay, so our next is a request, what's that? Okay. A request by the EPA to grant an environmental covenant over two areas in the vicinity of Peters Cartridge Factory.
Is that Chris or?
Who's doing that?
It's gonna be Roy and Kurt, and then we might need Mr. Roush.
Can you
I
Can you
sent
bring
him
those
the
up?
I sent him the invite.
They're here. Can you bring up those two
Oh, yeah.
photos? This all relates to Peter Cartridge Factory site, which was designated a 71 acre site back around 2009 is the date that I'll utilize. And the US EPA declared this to be one of the country's worst top hazardous waste sites, which they demanded a cleanup to be done under the Superfund program. The US EPA issued a unilateral administrative order in 2009, and then there was something in 2012 as well that required DuPont to clean it up. And I guess part of that process, there's a remediation action in those orders about what is required to be done. And one of the steps in the remediation process under the order is to acquire these environmental covenants on certain properties in the vicinity. The remediation work was to remediate it so that the property could be used, or the properties in the vicinity subject to the environmental covenants could be used for industrial and commercial purposes. Most of these covenants restrict its use for residential purposes. We originally started this about 5 years ago. I've been dealing with the attorneys for the US EPA in Chicago over that period of time. And there were 3 different parcels that were identified, and the one that created the most angst was a parcel that's not to be considered today, because the attorney for the US EPA needed, per her boss's instruction, to move this thing off center, and the only way to move it off center was to do these 2 pieces, because I think they're a little more simplistic than the third one, because the third one involves our Middletown Junction well fields. These, if you can see that on the screen, figure 1 looks, the area highlighted in blue is in the area where the old bridge was located, and Roy can correct me if I'm wrong. And then if you can move to figure 2. Figure 2 is that area highlighted in red. which is in close proximity to the Peter Cartridge development. Both of those are right-of-way and have been improved related to the relocation. Well, this one has been improved related to the relocation of the King Bridge project. And the other one, the old bridge was removed. And so you see exactly where it is. So it's, I guess it's not really being used for anything. It's just vacant land. I set forth in the resolution, if you had an opportunity to review it, what this restrictive or environmental covenant requires. And it requires compliance with activities and use limitations, land use restrictions, management, soil management requirements, and groundwater extraction or use prohibitions. The second bullet point relates to compliance reports, and it's my understanding from discussing this with Roy that, and at the time Roy was in charge of the King Bridge project as our county bridge engineer, that, you know, we, Warren County, acquired some pieces for that project, and those pieces that we acquired, some of them anyway, had already been encumbered by one of these environmental covenants because the property owners just went along with what the US EPA wanted. And so as part of review of this, I asked the engineer's office, specifically Roy and Kurt, would you guys be willing, if the EPA requires us to submit these compliance reports, would you do that? Because that's kind of onerous on us to have to do that. And he said yes. The response from the engineer's office was yes, because we're already doing it for some of these other pieces. This resolution, I also incorporated into it what some of the land uses allow and that are restricted as well. And I negotiated, if you're going to agree to this, provisions that said basically all the components or improvements related to the road, because both of these are related to Grandin Road, would be allowed. So to me, these were a little easier. That's why we sort of bifurcated this out. The other piece that's a little more concerning, which they will be coming back with at a future date. And the big restriction on it that again, Mr. Broush had so much angst with was it basically prohibits the extraction of groundwater. And on that piece, it's a big deal. On this, I don't see it as a big deal because this is basically just highway or former highway. And I asked that Mr. Broush be here in case there were questions about, well, isn't the aquifer under there and could we be extracting water? I doubt we're gonna ever have any well heads in these two areas for sure, since they're previously improved and now improved for road purposes. But this is federal bureaucracy. If you read any of this, beyond belief, it reminds me of the old line of Ronald Reagan, we're from the federal government, we're here to help. If you just read some of this stuff, and I hope you did, especially if what is allowed is limited recreational land use, and it has this disclosure of what the risks are if you use it for limited recreational land use purposes. And this is just bizarre about you take the risk of ingesting soils and waters and fish, the ingestion of fish. So anyway, it's...
So what's your recommendation? Should we do this?
My recommendation is I don't have as much concern about this one because it's roadways. From day one, I have, and why maybe it's taken 5 years, I've been asking the question, what notice, what due process, what involvement did the Board of County Commissioners on behalf of Warren County have back in 2009 through 2012 that said we agreed to do this? And then my other question that still today is unanswered is, well, what if we don't agree to do this? What's gonna happen? Are we gonna get some federal court order slapped on us? Are we gonna get some sort of directive from the US EPA? I don't know, that question's never been answered. So on this one, I was agreeable to move this forward because it's just roadway. And from a legal perspective, that doesn't cause me a lot of concern. Maybe from some other perspective, it might. I asked that question to the engineer's office, and the engineer's office says, we don't have a problem with this. Previously, Neil said that, now Kurt and Roy are saying that. So if you're inclined to agree to this, we have a resolution to approve it. Just know there will be another one coming back before you at some future date.
You guys don't have a problem with it?
No, it's good. In fact, I mean, we should point out the roundabout, you know, is right here now, and the bridge is right here, so, I mean, it's right, goes right through there. This is the other piece, which still encompasses some right of way.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been reporting since we purchased a few of those parcels for right-of-ways. Bruce touched on it since 2022. We've had yearly compliance reports with photos and just basically showing proof it's used as road right-of-way for the new relocated Grandin Road. So our office doesn't have any
All right, do we pass something?
Yep, I've got a resolution approving and authorizing the board president or vice president to execute an environmental covenant with the United States Environmental Protection Agency prohibiting certain uses of a part of certain properties owned by Warren County relating to the environmental cleanup of the Peter Cartridge Facility Site in Hamilton Township under the Superfund program.
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, Mr. Nolan.
Actually, Auditor Nolan texted me, he
just left.
Yeah, he just left. He had a 10 o'clock call with House leadership, I think specifically on the bill. And if it's okay with you, we can push him until next week and he can come have that discussion.
Sure.
I would just like to make sure you all are aware of this issue because it will really impact our lives dramatically if this gets done in the state budget. So this is a new House bill, House Bill 335, that is changing the Ohio property tax system. The House has said that it is their intention to move this bill in the budget, which is set to be voted out of the Senate this week and then go to conference committee. The Senate has been silent on this bill, as has the governor, so I'm not sure what the likelihood is, but all of the associations, the County Commissioners Association, the Auditors Association, all of the allied associations are operating under the premise that this could be put into the budget, which is why I had asked the auditor to come here to sort of talk about what its impacts, as written now, would be on the county. So just a couple of things you need to understand about this is that it's a prohibition on the collection of inside millage. So the impact to this county would be $32 million is what the Legislative Service Commission has projected that we would not be collecting. It would allow us to raise the sales tax through a vote of the people to recover that revenue. And so I'm not sure of the likelihood of that. It has an immediate effective date, and I don't know what the likelihood of getting an emergency clause, but regardless, the questions that I had for the auditor around of the collection of that inside millage, what is dedicated already in terms of other payments that we're going to be making, that we can know, those revenues being pledged. So it is a sweeping property tax reform that essentially prohibits us from collecting the way we're collecting, no resolution from the state in replacement revenues, but giving us only the power to go to the people for the potential sales tax increase if there's room. But that, unlike how we are able to now we could, through a vote of the board, increase the sales tax just like we did for the jail. This would have to go before the people, which means we'd have to put it on the ballot, and could be a huge time constraint. Obviously, the impact that I'm just starting to understand, and that I know Matt has been working on a lot, so hopefully next week he can kind of detail for us the impact, is that it's not just impacting counties, it would impact the townships, the school districts, and so forth. So this has been a huge sort of sticky wicket that has been thrown very late into the budget process, and
Do you know why it was suggested?
because the property taxes, because of the valuation increase in property taxes of recent, they're wanting to do tax reform, but instead of doing an actual tax reform, what they're just saying is, well, you just can't collect those taxes.
Yeah, people are
any longer.
ticked that their property tax bill has gone sky high because valuations have gone up a lot,
Yes.
so they're trying to do something.
Yes.
And something is so limited in scope, well, let's just do this and let them replace it on this other side, and that way we can say we did something. Problem is that this is such a small piece of the total property tax bill, because obviously the vast majority of this is school funding.
Right.
That's all not being
Right.
touched, for the most part, that property tax bills are really not gonna change that much.
Right.
Except there's one real harmed party, which is us, and then maybe we can replace the revenue if people decide to increase the sales
Well,
tax.
and all of the financing of public entities is based on the inside millage. And with schools even, you have House Bill 920 that also impacts it. So I'm not even sure of the constitutionality, because everybody's financing for all bond issues and so
All the
forth
bonds,
is
right.
based on that. But you know, as you all know, I serve on the board of the County Commissioners Association. I invited the auditor to listen to our call yesterday. He's been working on this issue. Matt has really been trying to work with the legislature for several years. You know, we grant that the system that we have is not sufficient, but to just say it's on the backs of local governments to fix it themselves, and to force that within 3 weeks to say we're gonna lose a third of our budget. I mean, I just think about the amount of police officers and what that would mean to our biggest, you know, we don't have a lot of discretionary funding in our county. The other thing that I would just point out
Is the association opposing this?
yes, yeah. I mean, everybody
Big time,
is
yeah.
freaking out about this. This is pretty substantial. But the other thing that the point I made is, you know, in this county, because we are blessed with the county that we have, we do not allow our taxable entities, our taxing entities that we have influence over, to collect huge reserves. And we have partnered with DD and other of our levies and said, you've collected too much, and we return those dollars to the taxpayers. As you all know, we did a $24 million from them, that when those tax increases were going in, we paid for our portion of the tax bill so that our property owners weren't, they had time to sort of plan. And so this is a really complicated conversation. And I've seen it a million times, how things get done in the conference committee that make no sense at all, and then we're dealing with the very real repercussions. And so I just, you know, I'm inquiring to Matt about, like, okay, well, what is this gonna mean about existing bonds, and what is this gonna mean about, you know, how much of this is pledged revenues already, just so we understand what we're dealing with. But I was shocked when I saw the LSC printout that said that's equivalent to $32 million a year for us.
Yeah, no, I think, thank you for bringing it to our attention. I think, yeah, we definitely need the auditor in here and, you know, again, being regarded as perhaps the most fiscally conservative county in the
Yep.
state, if we're not for something.
There's a problem.
Right.
There's a problem. But, okay.
Okay, is there anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Yes?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, 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 yes.
And you